Week 14 of the NFL is here. Thursday Night Football is in the books, and in one of the biggest surprises of late, we saw a New England win and 39 points between, of all teams, New England and Pittsburgh, which blew over that total that was very low of 30 points. But the score was still close, 21-18. Now, why is that significant to me? And it's because it's just another very close game that we've seen this season where the game came down to one score. If you look at last week in Week 13, there was 13 games. 9 of those games were decided by 8 points or less. Now, it's weeks like that that help me realize the power of teasers, alternate spreads, and various props to betting the NFL. If a game is decided in the final 5 minutes or 2 minutes or the last play, you aren't necessarily any smarter or dumber if you're right or wrong, when it's basically a coin flip and many of these games coming right down to the final whistle. So this is where I think comes the power of teasers, where you can sometimes win no matter which side you tease when games are decided by such small margins. So my whole point with these picks is creating bets that give you room for error and allow you to have bets that are almost always alive late in the game, even if you haven't made the perfect handicap in your pick. They might not pay you well and a lot, but they are often safe, and they're still generally around even money. So let's get into it, because I have picks from 11 of the 14 remaining games in this week. Now, I'm going to leave out a couple games. I want no part of either Derek Carr or Jameis Winston versus Bryce Young, so we'll leave off the Saints and the Panthers. I also don't know who's playing. Is it Lawrence? Is it Beathard? Somebody else? Or Joe Flacco in bad weather between Jacksonville and Cleveland? We'll skip that one. And while I do want to bet on Baltimore in some way, shape, or form, this looks like it's going to be a monsoon with the weather. Lamar was also sick earlier this week, and I definitely don't want to be betting Stafford in the rain, wind, and mud. So let's get into it. Parlay number 1, I'm going for some different props and alternate spreads, both teams to score 10 and alternate spreads, starting with the Lions and the Bears. And we just saw this matchup on November 19th. Chicago coming oh so close to upsetting Detroit in Detroit, leading 26-14. Deep in the fourth quarter before Detroit mounted a furious comeback and won that one 31-26. Detroit has the offense. They're 6th in points per game. Just look, they can score with anybody, but they are also going to be missing their center, Frank Ragnow, this week with a knee injury. Some weather in Chicago could slow down both of these offenses, but with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs for Detroit, and Justin Fields for Chicago, even if they are slowed down, the run games, you should still be able to put these teams in position to score some points. Now, if we look at the both teams to score 10 prop for Detroit, it's 9-4 this season. It's also 5-0 in recent games. In fact, with their defense just completely falling off a cliff of late, there's been at least 22 or more points between both teams in each of their last 4 in scores that have been 33-28, 29-22, 31-26, and 41-38. So as you can see, Lions games have just been shootouts lately. For Chicago, betting both teams to score at least 10 is a perfect 12-0 this season. Their head-to-head rivalry between these teams, if you look at the past scores and you look at both teams to score 10, it's also hit in each of the past 22 games. That's how I'll go here, both teams to score 10. Next up, it's the Texans and the Jets. The merry-go-round of Jets quarterbacks continues for another week. After dipping their toes into the Tim Boyle experience, New York decided that was an experience they quickly wanted no part of and wanted to move on from after just 3 appearances, where he threw for a whopping 360 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions. So we're back to Zach Wilson. He'll get another kick at the can, at least for this week. We've seen this story. It's not a good one. Wilson totaled 6 touchdowns and 7 interceptions in his time as a starter this season, and the Jets could never really ever score with him as quarterback. That included a stretch of 5 games where he threw for a total of 1 touchdown in 5 games. The Jets' defense is 9th in yards allowed. They'll probably do their part to keep this game close, and it might stay close. Houston is 5-2 at home. They are just 2-3 on the road. They're also out wide receiver Tank Dell, who's done and injured. But you need to score points to win games in this league or in any sport. C.J. Stroud alone has thrown for 11 touchdowns in his last 5 games. He's leading the league in passing yardage and could possibly will be the Rookie of the Year, and there's conversation of being the MVP of the year as well. Houston is also 4-1 straight up in those games. This is another game with some weather concerns. Houston should win. I want to take them just on the money line in this game, but they have no Dell. There's bad weather. Perhaps the team rallies around Wilson. I don't necessarily believe that, but just to be safe, I'm taking Houston on the alternate spread at plus 5.5. Next up, we have the Colts and the Bengals. Gardner Minshew has kept the Colts competitive, and they're actually very competitive. They're 7-5 in the playoff picture. The Colts offense is humming lately. They've scored 27 or more points in 5 of 6 games. Another backup, Jake Browning on the other side, has the Bengals believing their season may not be over either after he went into Jacksonville on Monday Night Football in Joe Burrow's spot and came away with the 34 31 win. For Indianapolis, the both teams to score 10 prop, it's 11-1. The only time it failed was when Indy beat New England 10-6 in Germany, and that almost doesn't count because New England has an offense that basically doesn't count. Cincinnati, they're both teams to score 10 prop, is 10-2. It's also on an 8-0 run. Cincinnati was held to only 3 points in weeks 1 and 4, and that was when they were on the road. So we have some backups here, giving their team some life, and two teams with bad defenses as well. Let's look at Indy. They're 27th in points per game allowed, giving up 24.7. They're 17th in passing yards allowed, and 26th against the run. For Cincinnati, they're 22nd in points per game allowed. They're giving up 22.8, 27th against the pass, 27th against the rush as well. I think we should easily see at least 10 points from both teams here for that bet. And finally, to round out this parlay, it's going to be 4 legs. It's Bucs and Falcons, another 1 o'clock kickoff. Atlanta leads this awful NFC South division at 6-6, despite having a negative point differential of -14, with just a true indictment of how bad this division is. They're also 4-8 ATS. Tampa Bay is right behind in this division, so this is a very important game. They're 5-7. They do at least cover spreads, though. They're 7-5 ATS are the Bucs. Atlanta's strength is generally running the ball. They're 6th, but that could be limited here with Tampa Bay, as they're the 10th ranked rush defense. Bucs games here, actually, for both teams. Both teams' games are very well balanced. They're always close. No one really runs away from anybody in these games. We look at the Bucs. Their games have been decided by 3, 10, 14, 17, 14, 3, 6, 2, 14, 13, 7, and 3 points. They're 5-7, and those 7 losses that they have come by 14 to Philly, 14 to Detroit, 3 to Atlanta, 6 to Buffalo, 2 to Houston, 13 to San Fran, and 7 to Indianapolis. So those bigger losses by 13 and 14 points have all come against some of the top teams: Philly, Detroit, San Francisco. Atlanta, definitely not in that caliber. Falcons games this season have been decided by earlier on 14, 1, 14, 6, and then 2, 8, 3, 5, 3, 2, 9, and 5 points. They're 6-6 on the season. Those 6 wins have come by 14 points against the lowly 1-win Panthers, and then by 1 point, 2, 3, 9, and 5. No matter who wins this game, I don't think it's going to be by that very much. Because Tampa Bay is the underdog, I'm going to choose to tease them. I can tease them all the way up to 14.5 to round out this parlay. So if I do Lions and Bears, both teams to score 10. Houston plus 5.5. Indy and Cincinnati, both teams to score 10. And Tampa Bay, all the way up to plus 14.5. That comes in at -125. Now, if you wanted to make that a little bit better, I wouldn't be opposed to Tampa Bay plus 10.5 either. That would get you very close to even money at -108. So those are your options there in that parlay. Let's move into the afternoon games now for this next parlay. It's another 4-teamer that I put together, starting with the Vikings and the Raiders. These are 2 teams coming off of a bye. The shine is coming off Josh Dobbs just a little bit here, after the Vikings have dropped back-to-back games, 12-10 to Chicago, 21-20 to Denver. But this is still a team that had won 5 straight prior to that, and this is they're very much in the NFC playoff discussion at 6-6. When Minnesota loses, it's not by much. Their losses this season have been by 3, 6, 4, 7, 1, and 2 points. The Raiders are very likely not in the playoff picture over in the AFC at 5-7. Now, when they have won, they've won by 1, 4, 4, 24 points, but against the Giants, and 4 points. So very rarely is it by very many points. Las Vegas will likely lean on the run game, but they're just 31st there, and they do average just 82.7 yards per game. Minnesota is 7th against the run defensively. Minnesota will also get Justin Jefferson back, which is a huge boost. Now look, Dobbs, he's no world beater. I don't think anybody who thought he was is probably a little crazy, but he went from everyone's favorite story to debating if he would even get the start this week, and I just think the overreaction in this league is ridiculous. He came in not even knowing the playbook and got some wins with them. He's probably the best man for the job right now, given what they have. Now, he's probably somewhere in between being a superstar and not worth starting. Maybe Minnesota wins. Maybe they cover. I doubt they lose by more than a touchdown. I've taken Minnesota all the way over to a plus 7.5 underdog in the ultimate spread market. Now, here we have a divisional rival between Seattle and San Francisco. Now, it was only Thanksgiving when we last saw this matchup, and it ended 31-13 for San Francisco in Seattle. That marks the 4th straight win for the 49ers in this rivalry. In those 4 wins, the 49ers have won by 18, 18, 8, and 20 points. They do have a recent history of really smacking around the Seahawks. This could be a letdown spot for San Fran after they got their revenge over Philly last week, and they got it large, winning 42-19. But that's not the first big win the 49ers have had of late. They've looked unstoppable right now, having won 4 straight since their bye week. and those wins have come by 31, 13, 18, and 23 points. Seattle's a good team. They're just not a great team. They're 6-6, and those wins have come over the Lions, 9-3, Panthers, 1-11, Giants, 4-8, Cardinals, 3-10, Browns, 7-5, but with PJ Walker at QB, and the Commanders, 4-9. Seattle has a ton of injuries to worry about as well this week. If you look at their injury report, Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet are all questionable on offense, and tackle Jaron Reed and linebacker Jordan Brooke are questionable on defense. San Fran, meanwhile, they're pretty healthy. They're also 16-0 with Purdy, McCaffrey, and Deebo Samuel all in the lineup. They're all in the lineup this week. Seattle scored 35 last week, and they still managed to lose 41-35 to Dallas. That makes them the first team to lose a game despite scoring 35 points and not punting in NFL history. Let's just go. San Fran win. You could probably make it better if you wanted to go San Fran 2.5, 3.5, 6.5. We can be super safe here and just go San Fran to win. Bills and Chiefs is next in this parlay. This looks like one of the games of the week. Buffalo being 6-6, going to Kansas City, who are 8-4. Now, Josh Allen has actually won the only QB to win in Kansas City twice. That includes last season when they won 24-10. Now, while both teams and quarterbacks are considered to be having rather down years, they're still both alive in the playoffs, and Allen is tied for second in passing touchdowns with Tua, and Mahomes is fifth in passing touchdowns as well. But Allen is also second in the NFL in interceptions with 13. He's thrown 1 in 8 straight games and also in 10 of 12. Anybody betting the prop markets, if you want to take Allen throw an interception, that's probably a safe bet these days. But then we have some conflicting stats here if we look at both teams and some of their trends. Buffalo is coming off their bye, and under Sean McDermott, they're a perfect 6-0 straight up in that scenario. But for Kansas City, they've won 10 straight games after a loss, and they did just lose last week. They're 15-5-1 ATS as a favorite of under 3 points or as a dog. They're a 1-point favorite here, so check there. Mahomes is 16-3 straight up after a loss. He's 3-0 straight up and ATS off of a loss this year. So there's a long history of the Chiefs bouncing back after defeat. Now, since weeks 2 and 3 of the 2021 season, KC hasn't lost back-to-back games either. That 2021 season is also the last time Kansas City lost at home by more than 10 points, and the score was 38-20 to, however, of all teams, this Buffalo team. Now, since then, they've only lost by 10 or more points on 2 other occasions. A little while later in that 2021 season, 27-3 in Tennessee, and then once this season, 24-9 in Denver, with Mahomes playing with the flu and the Chiefs just turning the ball over all game long. Now, we just saw Kansas City lose on Sunday Night Football, so the sentiment on them is down. Buffalo's coming off of the bye week. They have that record of being perfect after a bye, but this is a team that had lost 3 or 4 games prior to beating 3 or 4 prior to that, and that only win in that time was against the Jets. In fact, their 6 wins this season for the Bills are Las Vegas, Washington, Miami, Giants, Tampa Bay, and the Jets. That is not impressive. Only Miami has a winning record. They also have lost to the Jets and even to, of all teams, New England. This game could be a toss-up, but it shouldn't be a blowout. Either way, I'm going Kansas City at home, adding a whole bunch of points to them, making them plus 11.5 at home. They rarely lose at back-to-back games. It's been a long time since they've lost by more than 10 at home. Next in this parlay, I'm going Broncos and Chargers. Denver may be coming off of a loss, but that was in Houston to C.J. Stroud and the surging Texans. They had won 5 games prior to that, while also being 4-1 ATS in those games. The Chargers shut up the Patriots, but they still managed to hold 2 field goals, 241 yards of total offense, and that was against the 2-10 Patriots, and they only won 6-0. Looks like more of a baseball score. Usually, if you shut a team out, you should ease the victory, but the New England offense wasn't so inept. Certainly the Chargers would have got that L if the Patriots put up any offense at all, just anything at all. LA would have got that loss. Chargers games, they're all close. When they've won, it's been by 4, 7, 17, but that was against Chicago with Tyson Bagent. 21, that was the Jets with Wilson, and 6. So they're winning, but not by very much when they do. The Broncos, they're not a top offense, but they're not a bad offense. They're 15th. They score 21.9 points per game. Russ, he might do enough to get the win. He might even cover or win. He's probably not going to lose by more than 11. I'm taking the Broncos plus 11.5 in this game. So this parlay will be the Vikings plus 7.5, San Francisco to win, the Chiefs plus 11.5, and the Broncos plus 11.5. That comes in at minus 122. Now, of course, like I've said in some of those other bets, if you wanted to make that a little bit better odds, you certainly could change some of those plus 11.5s to plus 10.5s or plus 7.5s, or make San Fran, not just to win and change that spread a bit yourself. But that's what I'm going with there. Now I have one more parlay, and it's an all prime time game parlay with the Sunday nighter and the 2 Monday night football games. Eagles and Cowboys Sunday night. Dallas, they don't exactly have the most impressive resume when it comes to the quality of opponents they've beaten this season. In fact, not one of their 9 wins have come over a team with a winning record. The Rams and the Seahawks are 6-6, but no one else is better than 5-7, and there's a lot of other really putrid records down there when you dig into it. But after a Week 9 loss to this very same Eagles team, they've been scorching hot of late no matter who they're playing. Dallas has now won 4 straight, 6 of 7. They've scored 30 or more points in 4 straight games. They've scored 40 or more points in 4 of 6 games. They're the league's highest scoring offense. They've now won 14 straight games at home. Dak Prescott is playing as good as he's ever played right now. He's thrown 374 yards and 3 touchdowns. In the defeat to Philly in Week 9, he's averaging 316.8 yards per game to go with 20 touchdown passes in his last 6 games. That adds to his league high 26 passing touchdowns. The Eagles, they are the league's best team, but they're getting shredded through the air defensively. They rank 29th in passing defense, and they're giving up the second most touchdown passes, the most touchdown passes to opposing wide receivers. Now in Dallas with the Cowboys looking for revenge, Philly coming through a murderous row of playing the Chiefs, Bills, and 49ers. Philly certainly could be tired for this game. The Eagles' pass defense is 29th. They allow the most touchdowns to opposing wide receivers, which is a concern versus Dak and CeeDee Lamb, who have been going off like crazy. Lamb has a touchdown in 4 straight games right now. Philly are getting Goddard back at tight end. That should help. Dallas defense is good, but it also just allowed 35 points to Seattle last week. These teams have both been good over teams this season. If you wanted to bet the total in this game, Dallas is 8-4, Philly is 7-5, both to the over. And when Dallas plays a winning team, the over is also 4-1 this season. Philly, when they play a divisional game, in their last 8, the over is 7-1. These teams usually split their head-to-heads. There's not much between them. They're always competitive when they play each other. Philly may have won 2 of the last 3, but Dallas has won 3 of the last 5. And in the last 8, both teams have each won 4. Dallas, they also haven't lost at home to Philadelphia since 2017. No team has scored fewer than 17 points in either of the last 16 meetings between these two teams. You could probably tease this either way, whether you want like Philly or Dallas. I do think, given the high total in this game of around 51 points, we should at least see 2 touchdowns between each team. So I'm going to go both teams to score over 1.5 touchdowns. Now, let's move into Monday night, where we have 2 games, oddly, both starting at the exact same time. First, at least listed in the schedule, is Packers and Giants. Jordan Love and the Packers at the talk of the town after beating KC on Sunday Night Football 27-19. But Green Bay has been rolling for some time now. They've won 4 of 5. Love is 5th in touchdown passes with 22. That's tied alongside Patrick Mahomes. It would be very 2023 NFL if the Pack suddenly went into New York, though, and all that positivity ended, and they lost to the 4-8 Giants, and, of all people, Tommy DeVito. But the Giants, their wins this season have come over Arizona, Washington twice, and the Patriots. And that Pats win was 10-7 at home, where New England held the advantage in time of possession, just over 34 minutes to just under 26 minutes. They held the advantage in offensive yards, 283 to 220, and first downs, 18-10. The Giants even managed to pick off the combo of Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi 3 times, and they still couldn't score more than 10 points. So this is not a good Giants team or Giants offense, despite the momentum around the Tommy DeVito madness right now. Packers 4-1 ATS in their last 5 games, and they've won 16 games in a row in December, so that's a good trend for them. Monday Night Football has not been kind to the G-Men. This is a bad trend for them. They're a woeful 1-10 in their last 11 Monday Night Football games, so they probably should not keep getting this primetime treatment. This should be a Green Bay win, probably a cover as well, but we also may see some bad weather in New York, which could muck this up. There's also a wild card in the mix, and it's Tyrod Taylor has been cleared to come back to play quarterback for the Giants. Now, they've chosen to stick with Tommy DeVito, at least for now. That could possibly change if things get out of hand, so who knows what we see here. Let's go for the extra insurance and go Packers plus 4.5. And then the final game on the schedule, it's Titans and Dolphins. Gardner Minshew and the Colts just went to Tennessee, and they won 31-28 in overtime, with Minshew throwing for 312 yards and 2 touchdowns. Things figure to get much tougher for Tennessee and the Titans when they go to Miami to face Tua and the Fins. Miami's a perfect 7-0 straight up NATS versus teams with a losing record. They also haven't beaten a team, though, with a winning record. Now, if you count 2 wins against New England, they'd be 8-0 in those stats I just mentioned. They also beat Denver, who are 6-6. So really, they're 9-0 versus teams with non-winning records. And at 4-8 straight up, the Titans, they fit that bill. Tennessee already has road losses of 14 points against the Bucs and 20 points against Jacksonville in recent weeks. So certainly you could see them losing by double digits here. They are 13 to 13.5 point underdogs against this Miami team that's coming off back-to-back wins of 30 and 21 points. They also have other big wins this season. Their other wins have come by 7, 14, 21, 15, 50, 7, and then 2 going way back to the start of the year. So, like I said, they could possibly cover this 13-point spread all by themselves as good enough just for one straight bet. To make matters worse for Tennessee, Derrick Henry, he has been cleared to play, but he did leave last week's game with a concussion. They also could be out cornerback Christian Fulton, who's questionable. They will be out their best run stopper in Jeffrey Simmons, who is injured. Tennessee, they're 1-6 straight up NATS versus winning teams. Miami's definitely a winning team. Miami should win. Just to improve the odds slightly, I'm just going to go Miami minus 2.5, but you might be able to go 3.5 or 6.5 if you wanted to make this better, because with just those last 3 primetime games, this will come in at minus 159. So just a small payout there with Miami minus 2.5, Green Bay plus 4.5, and both teams to get 2 touchdowns between Philly and Dallas. So that wraps it up. Those are all my best bets from NFL Week 14. If you enjoyed this content, please give this video a like to help out the channel. Be sure to leave me your comments for your best bets and props down below, and good luck with all your picks this weekend.